Welcome to Fado, a series of stories about life in rural Ireland, mainly set in the period of the 20th century up until the early 1980s. From the 1940s up until the late 1970s, the travelling shop was an important part of rural Ireland. For much of this period, people living on farms and villages travelled by foot or by wooden cart, pulled by a horse, pony, or donkey. It was the travelling shop, initially a horse-drawn van, and then the motorised vehicle that brought animal feed, fuel supplies, non-homegrown foodstuffs and confectionery to country folk. In this episode, Paddy Dalton talks to the children of Milltown National School in County Galway about his time as a travelling shopkeeper in South Mayo, relating how in the early decades it was tea, sugar, flour and animal feed that were the most important commodities, as farmers then grew their own vegetables, fruits and had their own source of chicken, pork and beef. He also relates how the travelling shops also collected eggs from their customers, so much so that they were known as egglers. But with the growing use of the private car, followed by the coming of the supermarkets to towns, the demise of the travelling shop was inevitable. The latter part of Paddy's life in the retail sector reflected these changing times as he first established a supermarket and later a news agency in the town of Claremorris.
I'm here in Milltown School today. My daughter now teaches here and she invited me to come to tell them about the travelling shop that's the way we got our living when we were younger. Because I suppose travelling shop based on, they used to call them egglers years ago. For the reason was that a lot of people out in rural areas, they had their own produce, they had their own bacon and they had their own eggs and they had everything. They weren't buying loaves of bread or anything. So the travelling shop used to go out and we used to call them egglers when I was growing up. There might be three egglers coming into every village every week at different days. So they used to collect the eggs off the country people, or through all rural areas we used to cover because through all, you didn't go near town because. So you went around and they had eggs. A lot of people used to have a lot of hens that time because the hens would start laying around February and they'd lay till about June. And I know when I started with my first job with a man that I worked for 13 years on a travelling shop, a woman might come out with 18 score of eggs and there's 20 in a score. There was no such thing as dozens that time, it was all scores. And they would come out and you'd have to count the eggs and they'd have to be cleaned. They'd have to wash the eggs before they come out. And if they had dirty eggs, you weren't supposed to take them because there was egg inspectors going around checking the eggs. And some people with a wet cloth, they used to get a bit of bread soda and rub it in the egg to clean it. So we'd say if a woman came out, that was fine. If a woman came out, we'd say with 6 score of eggs, there was fillers in the egg cases. There were timber egg cases. They held 18 score of eggs actually. And if a woman came out with 6 score, you asked her how much she had, and she'd say, I have 6 score. Now you had to get a docket, a small little docket book, and you'd have to put her name and address on it, and the number of the egg case that we'd say it was B123. And you'd have to write the docket, write her name, as I said, and stick it on the last egg they gave to you. Because if the inspector ever inspected them, he'd know where they came from. So that's the way it was. So when the eggs in was people who would buy a bit of groceries, we hadn't a lot of groceries that time because we had tea. You had to weigh the tea because the tea came in tea chests, and there was no such thing as packet tea. There was no such thing as packet sugar. You bought big 200 weight of sugar in a canvas bag, and you weighed the sugar. Someone whoever were working in the store or in the shop, they'd weigh the sugar and tea. And biscuits, there was only about 4 different types of biscuits when I started. There was Kimberley and Macaro and coconut cream, and they're still on the go. And you'd put them into a biscuit tin. There were tin biscuits, and you'd write the name of the biscuit, and that's how you had. I don't remember selling sweets in the early years. So that's the way the travelling shops started really. But the country people were dependent on the travelling shops to come to collect the eggs, buy the groceries. Now flour was a big thing at that time. There was a 4 stone, an 8 stone and a 10 stone bag of flour. And as I said, I know there was one house beside us at home, neighbours, and there was 12, they had 12 in family. Now they would buy a tin stone bag of flour every 2 weeks. So their mothers and her grannies were in the house, they'd be baking 2 or 3 big cakes every day. And that's the way it was. And we had an 8-stone bag of flour then, and then you had a 4-stone bag of flour where there'd be maybe only 2 people in the house. But as the years went on then, things changed really. You see, when the eggs got scarce in we'd say in around June, that would be the time. I don't know why they used to get scarce that time, but that's the way it was. And then people, they used to have, they started in the later years, then some people out the country, they built piggeries, and they were rearing pigs, and they were selling pigs. And we would supply them with the pig meal. They used to buy pig meal, and they used to have their own potatoes and that. I thought the cheapest way they could produce them. And that's the way it was. My father, the Lord Merton, he was a Kilkenny man, believe it or not. He won an All-Ireland Junior Ireland medal with Carrickshock. You often heard of Carrickshock. And he came up to the bacon factory in Clamars, and he met my mother, and he got married here, and we still have a big connection with Kilkenny. But he used to go around to the local people of a Saturday. He used to work Saturday, and he'd kill a pig for them to be maybe one village one week and another village the next week. And he'd come home then with black pudding and liver and everything, and it was great, and people were dependent on them. And they used to, the teachers sometimes they used to cut up the pig, put it into it, salt it. Some of them used to hang them up in the ceiling with newspaper. And that's the way people were living. They had no big expense. The biggest expense farmers used to have that time was the rates. You know, it's for the house tax really. But that's history now. But then when I decided then that I was 13 years with this man working in Clamart. They were nice people. They had their own family at the time. They were well treated in it. Worked that long hours though, about 70 hours a week. We used to work. I'd start in the morning at 9 o'clock, and I often cycled home. We were about 3 miles from the town. Cycled home in a bad bike at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. So that's the way it was. You were glad to have a job. But after, when we got married then, we decided, we were a while married anyhow, and we decided that we weren't going anywhere. We'd either go to England for a job, because there was a lot of people immigrating in the years. Sure, there was that house I'm talking about that was beside us. There was 12 or 13 in family, and I'd say 10 of them immigrated. And they immigrated. There was 5 of us in it. I had 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and myself, and no one was immigrated. Got my mother, when we were talking about going to England, even though I hadn't a notion to go. And she said she hated to hear anyone saying you're going to England or any other way. But when we got married then, we decided what are we going to do, because I knew there was no future where I was working, and he had a family coming up too, and I had this thing in the back of my mind, well sure, someday he might say to me, we have my own staff now and I don't need it. So we took a decision that we would start our own travelling shop. We had no money. We were after building a bungalow house, and we borrowed about £800 that time in the bank. Someone wants security for you. So we took the chance anyhow, and we started buying off a wholesaler, Nyland actually in Galway. There was a lad from Clamart was repping for them, and we had no store, or we had no nothing. I bought a van, a big van now, like that you could shelf inside and bring your travelling shop around. So when we got the bit of the groceries anyhow, we didn't buy a lot. We used to put them in the spare room, and that's the way we started. And we were on there a while, and we found that I went around into people that I knew and asked them would they buy a bit of stuff off me and support it. And the way it was done then, we'd say Monday you did 4 or 5 villages. Now I only did a small radius around Clamart within 10 miles the most anyhow. And I would, we'd go to certain villages on, we'll say Monday, and different villages on Tuesday. And I used to take Wednesday off because of the cash and cards come in. I used to go to the cash and cards, and we'd have bits and pieces to do, and we used to work Friday and Saturday. So that's the way it was. And we do the same runs every week. The people have been depending on you because they'd know you were coming, and it was very important that you were in time and not to be missing days, because there was other travelling shops coming into the village that time, and you were trying to hold your own ground. So we started there and we were doing well, and next thing we built a store at the back of the shop where we had space, and we shelved it, and we used to sell briquettes and coal and cylinders of gas. Calor gas was a big thing that time. People had gas cookers, and I remember it as good as yesterday, and it's a long time ago now. I won't say what cylinder it was. A cylinder of gas was 18 and 9 pence. And there were €35 up to this year. You buy them for 29 now. So I'm only saying the difference. We used to sell a lot of, we wouldn't sell that much briquettes out of the country now, but we wouldn't be selling milk either now. Milk wasn't, people had their own cows that time, and the cream had started. And they started milk, and they started sending the milk to the creamery. And it meant that country people had more money then, because they were expecting the check. Now, they mightn't pay you this week for the groceries, but they'd pay you the following week. They'd say, creamery check is coming next week, and we'll pay you. So that wasn't a problem. I never had a problem with credit. So as the years went on, anyhow, we were doing very well. We had 3 girls and family, and we had to educate them. And my wife worked very hard too, I have to say. We both worked hard, but we were young that time, and we were doing it for ourselves. And as the years went on, then we were happy enough with what we were doing, and we had a friend that out in Melton. He was working with Carlisle, a company that I was involved with for a good while, and he went to America, and he came home, and he said to me one day, would you not be interested in buying a premises in town? And I said, I don't know. I said, sure. I suppose I should have bought it, but I bought this old shop then down in to the old shop, to the man that owned the travelling shop originally, and we went down and I bought the shop off him, and to an old shop, and we gutted it anyhow and put a nice little supermarket in it. And then my wife was running it, and we had staff, and we did 2 extensions while we were in it. This is back in the 80s now and into the 90s, so we were very happy. And then the travelling shop was an issue too. How am I going to run the travelling shop and run the business? Because when you're running a business, that time anyhow was probably different. Now you're going into big supermarkets now when you're only a number really, but that time people liked to see you cut there. If you were having a cup of tea, they'd say, I didn't see you last week, where were you? And you give a few sweets to the kids when they come in if they had children with them, and you built up a relationship with them. The travelling shop, I knew everybody, and I was in for years. But the supermarket was a different ball game completely. And I was competitive with prices, and we built up a big business in it. And, the travelling shop, then what am I going to do? And I started cutting some of the runs in. They were too long anyhow. As the business grew, I was working very long hours because I probably took too much on. And some of the travelling shops that was before me, they were getting older, and their families weren't interested, and they went off the road. So that suited me grand. And I have to say, country people, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with townspeople, but the country people, they were very loyal to me, and they were lovely people, and I got to know them all. And if someone dies, you'd go to the funeral, still would. So then I suppose everything started to change, and the supermarkets then started to come into the towns, rural towns, and they weren't going to do us any good either. So I remember I was buying a lot of the stuff off an island, and I remember there was a Sean Quish. He was the general manager in Galway at the time, over the VG, it was VG that time, supermarkets. And he came down to me, and myself and my wife, we had a little office and a canteen there at the back of the shop, and the girls were going to school to the convent down the road, and they used to come up for their lunches. So he came down to see would I be interested. We had a big field at the back, and he was wondering would be interested in investment to open a VG. And we said it was super value then actually, and we talked about it anyhow. There was too much money involved in it anyhow, and we didn't intend spending all our life there anyhow, so we hit it on the nail. We said no, we won't. And another man came in then, he was Donnelly, was his name. I think he was a Dublin man actually, and he opened up there, and I thought he did us harm for a while, but then there was green sheet stamps on the go, and they were trying to encourage everyone to come in, and then I started a scheme myself, set the dishes and everything, and we held our own now in fairness, but then those Duns came to Castlebar, and I suppose there was a lot of people from our town were only 18 miles, they were cheaper, and people were getting price conscious at this stage. So then the travelling shop, what were we going to do? So I started cutting out some of the runs. That wasn't great, and we continued them on. And I suppose after that, then we didn't know what to do. So the girls were sort of educated then, and they weren't going to come into the business anyhow. And Nola then we had the supermarket then, and we bought a news agency in the town. It was up in the middle of the town, and the supermarket was sort of on the outskirts of the town. So a news agency went for sale in the middle of the town, and to the great stand, and we had the lottos in it, and you see everything chained into. We had the papers and Sunday papers, but to the long you had to start at 8 o'clock in the morning, Sunday, Monday. So Nola decided she'd come and manage it for a while to see how it would work out for her. And how long you staying at Nola?
7 years.
Huh?
7 years, yeah.
And Nola was getting tired of it then, and we had it in the head that we would sell Common Road, what we call Common Road, where the supermarket was, and that we'd run if Nola wasn't going to stay, that we'd run the news agency ourselves with a few staff. Like. So Nola decided that she was right too, right? There was no future there for her because, the news agencies then started to give papers to every Tom, Dick and Harry. They were putting in the public houses and everyone that opened, and that was good. But we were still doing, Nola was doing very well now in the lotto and the greeting cards and all that. And eventually, anyhow, I stayed on the travelling shop then for a good while after that, but I almost gave it up altogether. But there was a few runs that I had good customers and people that was old, and they had no transport. And I suppose that's why the travelling shops were doing well that time, because no one had a care. That was the reality of it. They used to have a horse and trap going to mass. I'm sure only you young ones saw it. A horse and trap going to mass, or a pony and trap. Every Sunday there'd be 20 or 30 of them on the road, and there was no cares. I think we were the first care in the village when my father was working. That by a care, it wasn't a very good one, but for the care anyhow. And people started to get more money then, I suppose, and they were rearing their families and everyone. I suppose then there was no phones in the houses. No one had mobiles. If I got broke up out the country, if something happened in the van, I don't know how I used to get in touch with them in town, but there was no such thing as taking up the mobile and saying I'd ring home. there was an odd phone in the country houses, all right, but not too many. So coming back to the travelling shop, anyhow, I had to give up the travelling shop, most of it, and I kept on. In some villages now, they wouldn't be far from the town, that I used to ring them there, or they'd ring me. Everyone had the phone then, and they'd give me an order. They'd give me the order over the phone, or I would go out and collect maybe 5 or 6 houses together, and we'd bring it into the supermarket, and we'd get their order up and delivered, and they'd pay it. That wasn't a problem. And at the end of the day, then we decided, well, we're going to, the travelling shops were probably dying too. Like people of my own age group, their families were reared and they were gone away, and because there was no work for them. That was the reality of it. And they weren't buying as much stuff, and they were probably going to town oftener where there were supermarkets. And coming back now to some of the runs I used to at that time, I don't know many houses I used to call to. I called maybe to 60 houses. And I was going through there lately, and a few of the runs, there's 30 of them houses and there's no one living in them. It's hard to credit that now, like, even 40 in some of them. There was brothers and sisters that never got married, and they willed to some relation, and the farm, the land were too small, and they weren't going to stay in it, naturally enough, and the older people died, and that was the reality of it. So, through the dying race, then there was very little travelling shops, and there was only, when I finished, there was only 2 or 3 from different areas now. That was going in, and every travelling shop had its own runs, but people were disappointed, I suppose, when I left. I was disappointed myself, really, for them, because they were so loyal to me down the years. And but some of them, in fairness, now those people now even 10 miles from the town, they used to come in and do their shopping every week. That was a contact. They used to go to the supermarket, and they kept loyal to me while we had it. So eventually, anyhow, we gave up the travelling shop altogether. And in 1995, then we said we had the, what year did you buy the super, the new Edison roller?
We bought it in, I think it was 1993.
Well, yeah, that's probably right.
And we sold it just at the millennium.
Yeah, 2000.
And you sold the supermarket in 95.
Yeah, we sold the we decided anyhow that we'd sell the supermarket. I said we won't put it for sale. I had a brother that was started Carlisle actually, and he had a son that he thought might be interested, and he looked at it and he said, look, there's no point in me buying it. He said, because me that will run it, not the son. Because they were starting to grow and they did grow to be a big company. So we didn't put it for sale, and I thought to put the news around that we were going to sell it. And one of the lads that was working for my brother Carlisle, he rang me one night, and going away from the travelling shop a bit now. He rang me one night anyhow, and he said, are you selling the supermarket? And I said, I am. And to make a long story short, he bought the supermarket, and we were gone then out of business altogether. So Nola then had her own shop, as we call Nola's shop, and eventually we sold it. So Carlisle then had a few shops, good shops, so I went in and I was doing the buying for them, and I stayed 18 years there with them then. So I think that was near the history. There's a lot of things that goes through the travelling shop.
I think they have a few questions maybe about the actual travelling shop for you.
Pardon?
They have a few questions maybe that they'd like to
I
ask.
got in a family, but there was good profit, yeah, there was a pretty good profit. I never was too dear with stuff because, you know, you run a con yourself if you're going to be dearer than the other man. So, no, there was good profit, yeah. I have to say there was. But I tell you, one thing, it was hard work. If you work from 9 o'clock in the morning at 11 at night, it's hard work. And getting wet. Travelling shop is probably the hardest job you could be at because you could get wet. I often came in at night time, and I'd hardly be able to drive the van. My feet would be so cold if it snowed or got frost. Maybe get stuck on a hill. That's the way it was hard. There was good profit, that's the end.
What sort of things would you have in your shop?
What sort of things?
Yeah.
Well, we had tea and sugar, and we used to sell butter in the early years, but we did later on because everyone had their own butter. Everyone had their own cows, and they used to... Did you ever see anyone churning? No, you don't know what a churn is. They used to separate the cream from the milk, and they used to keep the cream, and they had what you call then for making the butter, and they used to put the cream into it, and some of them were churned like that. More than you put it up on the table and you twist it, and when you were so long at it, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, the cream would turn into butter, and they'd take it out then and they'd roll the butter for themselves. We used to call it country butter, and we used to sell a lot of items. We used to sell, which you would never hear, we used to sell pig rings. People used to ring the pigs. They used to ring the hens, a lot of hens. They used to, do you know why they used to put the rings on the hens? They'd put a different colour every year, and they'd know when the hens were getting old. And they'd write down, it might be pink one week or a year, it might be blue the next year, it might be white the next year. And they knew exactly where they were going. We sold a lot of different things. We used to sell buckets for people milking cows and feeding calves. We used to sell basins, and there was enamel buckets going, which they used to put the cream into. And the lid used to go down, fit down a small, maybe 6 inches from the top. And we used to sell a lot of linseed. They used to give it to calves and calf meal, different things. But we had to weigh everything because there was no packed stuff coming that time. But we sold a good bit of roasted now. We could sell washing powder, rinso. You never heard of rinso, did you? There was no bowls or area at that time because no one had automatic washing machines. They were all done with the washing board. And we sold a lot of stuff. We sold the most of the stuff we sold, people used to buy it. You've been never stuck with stuff now. But there was no perishable stuff that time. But as the time went on, then we started bringing out, people were sending their own milk to the cream. We used to bring out litres of milk. But there was no 2 litres at that time, or butter milk or anything like that. But the basics really. But I suppose when the supermarket started, then they had to be more items. There was no luxury at that time because people couldn't afford them. Some of the runs might be longer than others. There might be 50 one day and there might be 30 the next day, but I probably did too much because I was working too late, but that's the way it was. I was glad to get people to deal with me, and when I had them, I had to look after them. Maybe 60 would be the most anyhow.
Did you have help at the start?
No, we couldn't afford to pay help because we couldn't afford it. You know, my wife worked in the shop, and we had only neighbours coming in that time because we were living in a well, it wasn't a housing estate, but there'd be about 10 or 12 houses, and when they got to know we had a shop at the back of the shop, or a shop at the back of the premises, they used to come in and do a bit of shopping there. But in the latter years we did pay staff.